Never, ever argue with a narcissist. Do this instead. Hi, my name is Selena and welcome to Selena's Musings. As I said in my intro, you should never, ever argue with a narcissist. There's some other things that you can do, but arguing is not one of them. Now, before we go into that, let's kind of take a page out of Simon Sinek's book and talk about why. Let's start with why you should never try to argue with a narcissist. It is a truly foolhardy task. Not only is it a waste of time, it's actually like highly, highly toxic. I'm clear that arguing is almost never pleasant, except for those of us who love a good debate. But, with a narcissist, you're not debating. You are actually being attacked. That's what an argument is going to turn into, into a full-on attack, not about the subject, but your whole character, personality, your whole life, basically. They're going to try to come for you, okay? And you got to be really clear. When you're dealing with a narcissist, they're not just going to try to come for you like, you or I, assuming you're not a narcissist, would. They're going to come for you with their full kind of psychopathic, sociopathic tendencies. And I want to be clear that I understand that there's a difference between sociopaths and psychopaths and all this kind of thing. But, generally speaking, when we're talking about people with actual narcissistic personality disorder, you're dealing with high-level, malignant, narcissistic, pathological traits. We're not talking about people that just kind of have a few narcissistic tendencies. Most of us have some narcissistic tendencies, but people who actually have full-blown narcissistic personality disorder or some sort of other kind of malignant, toxic personality disorder or, traits, you got to be really, really cautious with these people because it's a toxic exchange. All right. So like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about why you should not argue with these folks. Let's be clear. People with narcissistic personality disorder are there to attack you. They're going to play dirty. They're going to go into some really nasty kind of, not just button pushing areas, but full on attack mode. And they have a lot of really particular tools that they use. You got to understand, these folks are master manipulators. This is a skill set that they have honed, and you're not going to be able to win because 9 times out of 10, if you do not have narcissistic personality disorder, you're not going to go as low as they're going to go, nor should you, because it's a really toxic, unhealthy game to play. Okay, so some of the tools that they use will include gaslighting, which is something that I've talked about in a previous video. Gaslighting is where they will make you question your reality by kind of manipulating facts, by not acknowledging certain truths. Another tool that they'll use is called word salad, which is where they'll mix up words and semantics and kind of play with words to make it seem that something was not meant the way that it was clearly meant. They know it, you know it, and they're trying to play with your head, okay? Another tool that they will use is called triangulation. Triangulation is when they take, it's an A and B conversation, and they'll bring that C on in, okay? They'll bring another person into the argument. And again, because narcissists are skilled manipulators, they're going to manipulate the situation to make it seem that you are the bad guy. They will put words in your mouth. They will reframe the facts. They will totally misrepresent the truth, so forth and so on. If you talk to people who have been in narcissistic relationships, whether they're romantic or professional or friendships, family, whatever, a lot of the folks who are not as close to the narcissist will think, wow, such and such is the nicest person ever. I can't believe they would say or do that to you. And that again is because these folks are master manipulators. They're very good at presenting a false self to the outside world and then, presenting their true, letting that mask fall with you. So when they triangulate and bring other people into the argument, they will seem like the angel a lot of the times, and you will seem like the devil themselves, okay? So you got to keep that in mind. Narcissists are not going to argue fair. They're not going to fight fair. Now, I will leave some resources down below that kind of explain more about narcissistic personality disorder. I think it's important that we don't go around trying to diagnose people if we're not psychologists or psychiatrists, but it's good to be aware of the red flags. So I have some links to some of my favorite YouTube channels that talk about narcissistic personality disorder and ways that we can cope if we have folks that we have to deal with in our lives that have these tendencies, along with some articles. Now that we talked about why you should not argue with narcissists, let's talk about what you should do instead. Now, in theory, this is going to sound very, very easy, but in practice, not so much. All right. So there's a few steps to it. Step number 1, you need to listen to me closely. Okay. You need to lay those boundaries out, your limits, make them very clear. Do not cross this line. That's number 1. Number 2, you need to walk away. Disengage. There's nothing that you can say or do that is going to convince the narcissist to kind of respect what you're saying or agree with what you're saying or whatever in any meaningful way, because they want that vitriol and that attention. And that's something that I forgot to mention in talking about why you shouldn't argue with a narcissist. But one of the reasons is because you're feeding into what they want. Narcissists, part of their challenge is that they need the energy and attention from other people to feel anything, to feel good about themselves or whatever. And while their favorite form of narcissistic supply is admiration, they will settle for negative attention. Any attention is better than no attention. So that argument, it gives them fuel for their fire. It's energy. So you have to withdraw from giving them the energy. And that is very, very hard to do, because most of us, if we feel like somebody is wrong, especially about us, and we feel that we're right, we want to prove that we're right. But that is a losing battle with somebody who is highly toxic. So again, you have to lay out your boundaries and make it clear. This is my line. I'm not going to let you cross it. And then you have to walk away. And in walking away, you have to depersonalize things. What do I mean by depersonalize it? Recognize that it is really not about you. That's very hard to do when you feel like somebody's attacking you personally, especially if they start triangulating and bringing other people in. But you have to. That's a part of the walking away, fully disengaging and saying, you know what? I'm not going to take this personal. This is really not about me. You're not going to convince them that whatever their diluted kind of views or perspectives are wrong. So make clear, this is a line you're not going to cross, and walk away. And if they cross that line, you need to be prepared to reinforce those boundaries in a way that are not going to engage them. So if you need to block them or quit your job, if it's somebody you work with or whatever, if it's really that toxic, then you may need to be prepared to move on fully. And that's okay, right? And again, I'm not trying to make light, because I know it's easier said than done, but you can't play games with these folks. It's an unhealthy losing battle. And I've been there and I've done that. I remember when I was really, really young, I had a friend who clearly years later, it became clear to me that they were very, very narcissistic, to the point of like grand delusions. And I remember they would say things and I would reference it and say, well, you said this like 2 minutes ago. They'd be like, no, I didn't. Straight face. I mean, it's a eerie, scary feeling when someone says something to you and 2 minutes later they're denying it. And for a long time, I was trying to like figure it out and make sense out of nonsense. And it just became a really, really toxic situation. So I just ultimately had to just cut them off. And I'll talk more later about kind of like that whole need to give up the kind of need to make sense out of nonsense, because that's a whole different way that narcissists can kind of keep us sucked in rather. But yeah, I hope this is helpful to you. And just as a reminder, walk away from the argument with a narcissist. I can never say that enough. It is not worth it. I would love to hear your thoughts below. Have you ever found yourself arguing with somebody who was just clearly toxic and it seemed to be a no-win situation. How did you handle it? I'd also love to hear if there's any suggestions you have for future topics that you'd like for me to touch on, because you are my muses. You inspire me to come on here and share my thoughts and perspectives, and I really appreciate y'all. So thank you and have a good one.